Hi again, so here we are. Last episode, well, but it had to happen. I felt like it was a lot of beginnings and endings, don't you think? Uh, tell me if you think differently, but every single scene, I mean, even when we start with John, we find him, after he does his whole running away for the night and the guys who are ever so sweet and charming bring him back, and it was a very sweet scene. He finally accepts that he is going to be a brother of the Night's Watch, and so we see him going off in a new direction in his life, and of course leaving the wall, like physically leaving, because now they're going out there to find out what's happening. I mean, the bear is sick of just sitting around. Benjen Stark has not returned, is presumably dead, so he's got to find out something, right? So they go. Tyrion and Tywin. So here's the end of his just kind of fooling around, living on the cusp of things, and just basically getting by and, drinking and whoring. He's got some responsibilities now. And the scene was especially bittersweet for me because, well, I mean, not just for me, but, in general, here he is giving him this huge responsibility of becoming, basically the regent until he can show up, right? Because he hates, well, Tywin is not liking some of the decisions that Joffrey is making, which, I would say so. So he gives him this responsibility, and you can even see it on Tyrion's face, which I thought was brilliantly acted. How he's taken aback, like, my dad is actually trusting me with this, so this means he has some faith in me, which is good, I guess. I mean, this is as close as Tywin Lannister is getting to saying, hey, Tyrion, I love you. So this is kind of huge. I mean, he's not the only one in this whole story, but he's got major daddy issues. Robb now gets crowned. Here he is going on an entirely new direction that he never thought he was going to go in. His role as being the son is now over. He is now the head of the Stark family. And not only that, the Bannermen have named him King of the North. Huge stuff. I don't think anybody could really wrap their head around that. And, well, not easily anyway. Joffrey is enjoying being king now. His true colors are coming out. And he's such a cruel character. I mean, you really start to dislike Joffrey. If you didn't already, where have you been? But if you didn't already, you really dislike him now. I mean, torturing Sansa like that, not cool, man. And Sansa, I don't know why it's kind of been bugging me, and I was hoping maybe it was just a couple of episodes, but they have been giving her a little too much backbone than actually what the story called for. Within the story, once her wolf had been killed, she kind of loses her inner strength. She loses the backbone, the wolf inside her, I guess you could say, and she becomes very meek and timid and too trusting. She doesn't have that kind of revolt in her. You know what I mean? There's no rebelliousness inside her, I guess is a better word. And they keep showing her like that, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'll accept it. It's a little more interesting to watch her having a little bit of backbone, but Sansa in the story doesn't, and I think it was important for her not to be a little bit weaker, a little bit more, I don't know, gullible maybe in a way than the rest of the siblings. At least I thought it was important. But anyway, yeah, it's something that kind of bugged me. So yeah, her life has changed dramatically, and a lot of endings for her. Her life as she knew it is done, and now you almost feel like a cat in a cage, with Sansa, because she's got no family around her. She's surrounded by Lannisters, and now she's being, well, she's looking at the prospect of being married to Joffrey for the rest of her life. Not great. And of course we can't forget Arya, our dear sweet Arya, who was shielded by Yoren, as we saw in the crowd last episode, and now he basically has saved her life because he's taking her with him to the wall, and that's what we see. Her attitude has changed a little bit more. She's become, well, she was, at the beginning you see her, she's kind of like a little bit of a street rat, you know, killing pigeons to eat. But yeah, so her life has also ended, very much like Sansa, like I mentioned earlier. And now she's embarking on this 1,000-league trek back to the wall with Yoren. We'll see what happens. And we see that she has met Gendry, and that relationship will begin, I suppose. And I won't say any more, because I don't want to spoil anything. You know how I am about spoiling. So anyway, Jaime. Well, things aren't looking so great for Jaime. And Catelyn certainly has a lot of anger inside her. Hopefully she's gonna make some good decisions later on, but I think she's one of these players that it might just stay in her head a little bit too much and won't be able to see the full game as it unfolds. But we'll have to see, I guess, for next season. And then, of course, Daenerys and the Dothraki. Well, and Drogo. Now that the spell is done, the witch has exacted her revenge on her. She thinks he's, you know, very clever. Drogo's basically a vegetable. And Daenerys is suffering. Her world is coming to an end. The life that she knew, however brief, is now over. She's lost her child, she's lost her husband, and she had to be merciful to him and killed him, and in the process take her vengeance out on the witch. And she doesn't know really what she's doing when she does it. She just knows that this is what she has to do. And the witch is burned in the pyre. She walks in. Jorah is dying. You can really see how much he really loves this girl. But she walks in, comes out unharmed, just naked, which I guess was good for some viewers, but then of course her 3 dragons are born. Now in the book, when she's found, she's actually they're suckling at her breast, which I thought would have been a really cool thing to see, but I guess the way that it was shot and special effects or whatever. But anyhow, I liked it, I enjoyed it, it was good. I noticed, and I don't know if it was just me because I was sad that the series was coming to an end, but there was a really, well, at least for me it felt palpable, an undercurrent of sadness throughout the whole thing. Even though some things were great, you were moving forward, you were moving backwards, but there's this little nagging bit of sadness that just kind of penetrates through every scene. And I think I couldn't help but be affected by it, even though it was coming to an end. The ending was great, the way it was shot was beautiful, but you just can't wait. You can't stop here. There's that little ache that just won't go away, even though it was great and really cool. But there's a little ache, and I thought it was just me, but really I'm reading book 4 right now. I'm more than halfway through, and I keep finding that same little undercurrent of sadness, which is I think maybe a little bit of a commentary on life itself. And I like to think that it's the little bit of the author that kind of penetrates into the work. That however much we love something, however much somebody succeeds or doesn't succeed, whether we like them or not, that there never really is a winner. And I think that's the point. Whatever games that you play, there'll never really be a winner because there will be too much loss on either side. And I keep thinking that perhaps this is the philosophy that the author has, so it keeps penetrating into the work. And I find it fascinating because it makes it real. And I love it when things show it that way. I'm not saying that I particularly feel that way. I tend to, well, I try to take a more positive view of life, but in general, but I love that. I think it's something that doesn't have to be written, but if you pay attention enough, you kind of get that sense, and they did such a great job, I thought, of putting it into this episode that I felt it right away. And it sort of felt like zero velocity. Do you know what that means? Do you remember high school physics? When an object is ascending, there is an increase in velocity until it hits that peak, which is zero velocity, and it stops moving, and then it starts accelerating on its way back down. That's how I felt with this episode. I felt like we reached zero velocity, like we got to that one, fraction of a second, that one heartbeat before things just start rolling really fast again. And I think that's going to be the really fun part about next season, is things are going to be moving quickly and all over the place. All the characters are going to have a lot of changing, and we get to have the fun of seeing it, being involved, being emotionally involved with these characters, which I already am. I'm wrapped around a little finger, but that's me. And we get to have fun all over again. And having said that, I think a lot of the characters, you'll see them become even more three-dimensional than they have now, which is something I really love about this author. He gives them a lot of dimension, and that's why we can't specifically say we love or we hate these characters as much as we might get, attached or, put off by some of them. There's still something about them, their humanity, that we can relate to. Even Joffrey, I know, even Joffrey. He's a kid, but yeah. So I love that there's a lot of self-actualization, a lot of honesty that these characters have to face about themselves, and sometimes it's quite brutal. And sometimes it's completely, they're completely oblivious to it, and only we get to see it, which is fun too, because it almost feels like a secret. Anyway, that's all that I'm going to say about this episode. I loved it. It was great. Well done. I can't wait till next season. It's going to be so good. And I can't wait till next month when the 5th book comes out, because I think that's going to kick butt too. So before I end this, I just wanted to say just one thing that was really neat that came up from some of the comments that you guys have been writing for me, is that, and it's been mentioned a couple of times, people have asked me if I've read or have watched I, Claudius, and I think I mentioned in my episode 5 review that I'm a huge Robert Graves fan, and I have loved I, Claudius, Claudius the God, the book and the show. They were both brilliant works, and I have noticed so many similarities with George R. R. Martin and Robert Graves' work. I'm sure he has probably read him and maybe was inspired or influenced or both. I don't know. I don't know for sure, but it feels that way. A lot of the characters and the movement of the story seem very familiar, and especially now, like I said, I'm reading book 4, and even more similarities there. So of course, I'm just ravenous for this book, so I just cannot wait for book 5. So I had to mention that just because it was dear to me and I loved it. So please keep making those comments for me, keep the conversation going, because I love it. Yeah, please tell me what you think. Give me your ideas. Maybe we can keep a chat going until then or something. I don't know. Make a suggestion to me. We'll see. So yeah. So comment, rate, subscribe if you haven't already. And that's all that Mrs. C has to say, folks. So until next time, ciao.